So welcome, everybody. I have Clare Morell back from the Ethics and Public Policy Center, but really you're here just as a mom and we're just going to chat.
That's right.
Last time we talked, you told me about how you use a Wise phone, and I logged that. And then I had a couple other conversations with people who are also adults, and they're like, I don't keep my phone in my room at all, or I use a flip phone, and I was like, hold on, this is doable. Like, we can do this too. We talk about our kids using simple phones, but what about parents
That's
and
right.
adults? Tell me about when you made the transition from a smartphone to, like, I'm just gonna call it a dumb phone.
Yeah.
And do you use it all the time, or do you juggle two phones?
No, I love to explain this because it's been a little bit of a journey. This really started April of last year. I guess that would be April of 2023. And the impetus for me was I had been kind of struggling with the relationship with my smartphone for a while, especially just recognizing in myself that I didn't want to be on it when I was with my kids. But at the same time, I think especially moms, I'm so tempted by the multitasking. I'm like, oh, wait, you're like playing right here on the playground. Like, let me just place the Amazon order I needed to do before I forget, or like respond to this email. And so I just found, though, it's so hard. Like, once I pulled it out, it's so easy to get sucked down, or then you see all these notifications. Oh, and then I have these emails. And then before I knew it, I was like lost in my phone again, and my kids like pulling up my leg, like, mommy, whatever. So I was already wrestling with that, and like I didn't like the relationship, and I had already tried to do some things to my smartphone. Like, I had already deleted social media off of it because I found Instagram was super tempting to scroll as a mom, especially when I was like having a nursing infant. You're just sitting there nursing a baby. It was just like easy to just be like scrolling Instagram. And I was already noticing that feeding into a lot of mom struggles around like comparison to other moms. And there were so many like helpful mom accounts to follow, but then I felt like I was almost overloaded with information, and then feeling like, oh, I'm not feeding my kid enough vegetables, or I'm not getting them enough outdoor play every day. And so I just already noticed it was causing me more anxiety as a mom than it was helping me. I first just started by getting rid of Instagram off of my phone. I was like, I don't need to be on this on my phone. I still have an account I can check on my computer if I want to catch up with friends, but I don't want it on my phone. It's too tempting. And so I'd already kind of taken steps to remove things and just remove notifications. Like, there's a lot of tips. I think we had talked about this on the last episode, like how to break up with your phone. There's lots of ways to kind of dumb down your smartphone. But I just felt like it still wasn't enough for me. And then I went and spoke at a college campus to actually a group of students there who had received, it was like a scholarship program called the Unplugged Scholarship that was incentivizing kids to give up their smartphones and get a dumb phone, like a light phone or a Wise phone. And they would get like a scholarship towards their tuition. And I speaking to these kids about their experience going dumb. And I was so convicted because they had me come and give a talk on like the harms of smartphones. And then at the end of the talk, they're like, so do you have one? I was like, I do. Oh my goodness. I feel so guilty. And you guys don't. And you're like telling me all these benefits you've seen as like college students not having it. And what struck me the most was one kid I was asking him how he knew he was kind of ready to make the switch. And he was like, I wasn't ready. He's like, I was addicted to my phone up to the second I got rid of it. And he was like, but that's how I knew I had to just get rid of it. Like, it wasn't like I was gonna all of a sudden be ready to do this. I just knew I had to do it. And so I was like, wow, okay, if you can do this, I can do it. So I came back from that trip really reinvigorated. And at that time, I can't remember exactly what led me to do this, but I got in touch with the founders of the Light Phone Company because a lot of these students had light phones, and talked to them, and they let me test their light phone out. So I started by going to the light phone, and I had that for about a year, and maybe, I guess, up until September of this year is when I switched.
Wow, only a light phone.
I had a light phone, and I kept my smartphone, but it did without cellular service. And so it would only function over Wi-Fi. So it almost became more like an iPad, but I was able to really distance myself from it and keep it kind of in my bedroom. And the only reason I kept it was for a few apps to stay in touch with friends like overseas, like WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger. There's a couple of friends of mine that are out of the country, so they don't really have texting, but I could message them.
Yeah.
So and Marco Polo, which it's moms know, it's kind of like this video chat that I would sometimes exchange messages with my friends. So I kept my smartphone, but I really didn't have it on my person anymore. And so it was a really good switch. I liked the light phone. There were downsides to it as a mom, and I can explain why I ultimately ended up switching to the Wise phone. The main downside was it was hard to text on. And I think I appreciated how I got rid of a lot of the other distractions I didn't need, like social media or email or an internet browser. And honestly, the phone service was really great. Their phone service was through AT&T, so I had really no issues with service. I was able to make calls as I needed to, but it was pretty much just a phone for talking and texting. It doesn't have a lot of functionality beyond that. I liked how small it was. Like, it was physically, and this is what they really were trying to do, it's physically very light. So I would, at first when I made the switch, I kept feeling like I was missing something when I walked out of the house. Like, oh my goodness, like I don't feel my phone in my pocket, because it's like the smartphone actually has like some weight to it. But even that weight is supposed to like remind you of its presence. So the whole point of the light phone was that you're supposed to forget you have a phone on you. It's literally so physically light, and it's this tiny little thing, and it has like a Kindle kind of screen, so it doesn't even have blue light. Like, it's very like pleasing to look at, and it's not addictive. I think that's like the main thing. It's like I really only pulled out my phone when I needed to call or text someone. Otherwise, it had no allure to me. The light phone was great. I think the downsides to it was it didn't have a camera, which I talked to a lot of moms when I had my light phone. They're like, well, I couldn't do the light phone. I take too many pictures of my kids. Another big kind of drawback was GPS. The light phone has a directions app, but it's not like Google Maps or Waze or something. So that was a downside. Most of the places I drive my kids, I know, so I didn't really need GPS. But if I did need it, this was my workaround I found. My husband helped me use my old smartphone, and you can download offline maps onto Google Maps, which actually is really great because I liked the Google Maps interface for driving. I was used to it. So I could still use my old smartphone as a GPS in my car.
A lot of people's cars have the navigation.
Yes. And now I feel like there's a lot of cars that have it built in. So that was not an issue for me. I kind of found a workaround to the light phone not having a great GPS. And then I just found, honestly, the things I needed that I had used to do on my smartphone, I did on my computer in kind of a chunk of time during the day. So instead of it being like this interspersed distraction, and be like, okay, I get on my computer at night once my kids go to sleep and I respond to all my emails or place my grocery order or like just all those admin-y tasks. But it really did help me be a lot more present in the moment with my kids. There just wasn't anything to really pull me away from that. And the other thing that I kind of reverted to is I got just an old fashioned notepad, because I'm sure I feel like moms, you like constantly have these to-do lists. And so if I thought of something while I was at the park with my kids, instead of doing it on my phone, I would just jot it down on my notepad, like place this grocery order or write this person's birthday card or whatever, thought came to my mind. And then I just kind of had that notepad with me I could reference once I got back to my house. And it really was mentally freeing. Like, instead of, I don't know, thinking and getting anxious about trying to do all these things at once, I could just kind of compartmentalize, and almost just writing it down, my brain could kind of just let go of it and know I would deal with that later. And I could just go back to, being at the playground with my kids or whatnot. So
yeah. Because like, if you're at the playground and you're like, okay, I need to place this grocery order.
Yes.
Or send an email, for example, and you go and you send the email from your smartphone. You're not doing it as well as you could if you're actually
definitely
sitting down at the computer.
That's right.
You're making mistakes. You're rushing through it. It's more anxiety ridden to do it on the go than it would be just to write down a reminder and do it when you're focused later.
I totally agree. It was I just noticed a mental difference in myself probably like a few weeks into switching to the light phone, that I was my attention span, I feel like, for things just kind of started to come back. because I don't think I even realized how interrupted my attention would be by just like little things on my phone
Yeah.
or smartphone.
Yeah.
And so I really appreciated that. And I feel like then my ability to just like enjoy the moment I was in started to come back. Cause I think at first it was a little like you just get anxious, at least for me. I just am kind of an efficiency junkie, which is like I just want to be maximizing my time, maximizing my
Claire.
efficiency.
Yeah.
And
I can't even like walk downstairs without carrying something with me. I have to be like double
I'm
tasking
like
at all
always have to be
times.
doing multiple things. And
Yeah.
so initially when I just had the light phone and I'd be on a walk with my kids, I'd be like, oh, well, I'm not getting as much done because if I did have a
Right.
smartphone, I could
Right.
be, like, I forget what things I like to, I mean, like writing emails is like an easy thing to multitask for, or again, like
Mhm.
placing an Amazon order in my cart. I feel like other
Yeah.
things I would just try to like, I don't know, catch up on my phone while like on a walk. But what I started to realize is when I had my light phone and I couldn't be multitasking because I was like pushing my kids in the stroller, I
Mhm.
actually just started to talk to them more. Like
Mhm.
it's just strange to like the things that then just replaced it. I'm like,
Yeah.
no, I actually just enjoy not feeling like I have to do a million things at once. Like it's a lot more, there's just a lot more peace and like in simplicity of like, I'm
Yeah.
I'm actually just going on a walk with my kids. I'm not like going on a walk with my kids and trying to do 10 other things, which I do think we're
Mhm.
in just this like very fast paced culture where everyone's busy. And so you're just always trying to do as many things as once as you can. But I think to your point, you end up not doing either of those things like particularly well in the sense that I was like, yeah, probably writing sloppy emails, but then also I wasn't really getting great time with my kids, which is like I'm putting in this effort to like take them on a walk, go to the
Yeah.
park. It's like that's great relationship time that I was missing out on. And so it's funny. I also just started to notice things. I don't know. I didn't realize how much I think I was looking down at my phone. And so my kids would just point things out to me. And I feel like I kind of started to get the eyes of a child again. Where you're like, that is a
Mhm.
really beautiful tree. Like I just felt like I started taking in more nature and it was just really life-giving to be like, this is where I live. This is a beautiful place. Like, yeah, it was just relaxing for my mind. And I think the more research I've done too, as part of the smartphone era, is that we're actually never giving our brains like a true break. We
Mhm.
go from task to task to task. And like there used to be normal moments in a day, in the
Yeah.
cell phone era where people would just ride the bus and they would talk to the person next to them or
Mhm.
read a
Yeah.
newspaper or do something that was actually restful for your brain. And I think, yeah, the smartphone culture has really taken, I think, just built in kind of moments of rest or kind of
Mhm.
relaxation during the day have kind of been taken away from us. And so for me, switching to the light phone and now the Wise phone, I have felt more present, not just with like the people I'm with, which is mainly my kids during the day, but just the
Yeah.
world that we live in. Like I feel like I say hi to a lot more people, greet my neighbors, just enjoy the beauty of the place that I live. And I feel like my stress and anxiety levels are a lot lower
Mm.
from trying to do so many things at once. And I think it's also just helped me then recognize there's just going to be natural limits to my day where I was trying to
Right.
fit, I think before I was just trying to fit too many things into the day.
Mhm.
And now it's like, okay, well, I have this time at my computer in the morning before my kids get up during their naps. And then like once they go to bed at night. And if it doesn't kind of fit into those times, then it just might not get done today. And so I think it's just
Yeah.
made me realize I can't say yes to as many things. I've had to learn to say no to more. So in a lot of ways, I think it's slowed me down, but in good ways. In the sense, I don't feel like our brains were built to multitask as much as smartphones allow us to do. And
Yeah.
so I think it has been better for just like my life and well being and relationships with my kids, kind of moving away from the smartphone.
Yeah, and I bet the benefits to the kids are even things that we don't even know yet. Because how, like, I don't know, addicted I am to being productive. Like, I can't handle it if everybody in the house is just lounging around.
Yeah.
Like, I almost pressure the family to be constantly productive. Like, I'm most happy if I have like the dishwasher going, the laundry going, I'm cleaning, and my kids are all cleaning their rooms, and like everybody's doing
Doing something.
something. I'm like, and that I feel like I'm putting some pressure on them to just constantly be productive rather than enjoying moments
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
So to retrain my brain would be really interesting to not have to be constantly productive.
Yes, it was a shift for sure. And I
Yeah.
feel like anything when you change a habit, the first couple days I felt so weird without my smartphone. Like
Yeah.
I would, or like I kept thinking I was like supposed to be doing something, you know, how you're like,
Right.
I don't know
Yeah.
if you've ever like left your kids to go away for a night with your husband or go away for the weekend or something. I feel like it's always like the first couple hours, I'm like, I just feel like I'm supposed to be doing something. Like I'm used to
I
just
know.
like taking care of these people all the time. And so it was kind of like that with the smartphone. When I first gave it up, I'm just like, I feel weird. I feel like I'm supposed to be doing something right now. But then I feel like the more time that went on, I guess I was surprised by how often I like pulled out my phone to check it, because when it was the light phone, I'd pull it out and be like, oh, there's nothing to check. I don't have email. Like I have nothing.
Yeah. Right.
So it was just like, and then I stopped checking it as often, but it was revealing like that habit. I think when I like just took a total step away from it. The kind of like working my way out of these kind of habits I didn't realize I had developed. And then it did feel like I kind of started to turn a corner where I was like, oh, I'm actually enjoying this a lot more. Not having this.
Like a relief.
Yeah.
Like a relief.
Like I might have,
I could be doing stuff, but I actually feel relieved that I'm not.
Yes. And that when I left the house, like I could really like truly take a break or like leave things behind. Like even like on a Saturday when we would just try to kind of get away as a family, it was like things weren't like following me, where it was like, oh, this email came in and I don't really want to respond to it right now with my family. But now I kind of know about
You're
it.
thinking about it. I know.
It like intrudes and so I feel like that was even freeing, where it's like, if things come in, I just don't even know about them until I get home and get on my computer. Which I feel like we have really like lost the weekend of like, that is supposed to be a break from work and other things. And I think it just kind of increasingly kind of crowds in. The other thing I will say, when I first went to the light phone, because it is really kind of clunky to text on, I found myself, I would make a lot more phone calls, which is kind of what my parents like grew up doing. Like that's what I really mainly listened to, is my mom would use a home phone to call her friends or coordinate things. And I actually really enjoyed that. And I think it's actually, even having the light phone and now going back to the Wise phone, which I'd love to talk a little bit more about, is easier to text on. And I think could be a better kind of alternative for a lot of moms who like the light phone just might be a step too far. But I feel like now I've kind of retained that from my year of being on the light phone, is I try to like call people more, because it is so much more efficient. Like I can just talk to them in 2 minutes. And just in terms of when you're with kids, I'm like, oh, it's actually a lot easier for me to call, because I don't really have my hands free to text. I'm holding my 10-month-old daughter. And it's going to take me way more time to be like trying to type out this message than to just like pick up the phone. And I even like that I feel like my kids know more of what
you're saying. Yeah.
If it's a phone call, and I'll even tell them like, hey, I just have to call daddy really fast, or mommy's going to call her friend, you know, we're going to try to meet them at the park later, or whatever it may be. Or like often it's like, oh, I have to call the pediatrician to schedule an appointment, or you know, just like those life kind of admin tasks. I'm just trying to do a lot more of that over the phone. So that was another kind of big outcome of switching to the light phone, is I text less and I try to make more like voice phone calls.
Yeah. Okay. So did the Wise phone kind of solve those issues? Switching from the light phone to the Wise phone.
Yeah. So I'm really excited, because the Wise phone, so even while I had the light phone, I saw the Wise phone was coming out with a new model. They were trying to make a lot of improvements from their kind of original model. So I went ahead and signed up for the pre-order, and then waited a while. And I think, you know, some of these alternative phone companies, like I understand it's taking them time. They're really trying to make sure that the model works well. And anyway, there's just a lot of more layers. So it finally shipped and came to me in like the end of September. And so I've used it basically the last 3 months, and I love it, because I would say the Wise phone, and they would even classify it this way, is between the minimalist phone, which is like the light phone. It's truly, truly minimalist. Like you're really trying to go off the grid. And the smartphone, which has all these distractions that you really don't want to even have access to. The Wise phone like puts itself in the middle. They've called themselves a healthy phone. So it has a lot more tools and functionality of a smartphone, but they have kind of drawn the lines to say, we're not going to allow any kind of apps on our phone that are addictive or distracting or like intentionally are going to be trying to, recruit more of your time and attention. And
Yeah.
so they've really like, they started with a really limited number in what they call their tool drawer. And
Okay.
they have a team that is actually really like heavily vetting these apps. So they're pretty careful about what they like allow on.
Yeah.
But you can request tools. So if you need an app for some reason that you're like, oh, they don't have it yet in the app store, you can fill out a little form and explain this is why I want to use it. And I have found like they're
Interesting.
pretty responsive to those. And so they kind of keep updating the app store that they offer, which is, it's really like a version of the Google Play Store, but overlaid with their operating system. And so
Okay.
the other reason I like the Wise phone is it's an Android. It's like a Samsung Android phone that they have put what they call their Wise OS, like,
Yeah.
Apple iOS. It's like
Yeah.
their operating system is overlaid on it. And so you have like the very reliable hardware of like a very established tech company that's been making these phones for a long time. So the camera is super high quality. I don't think it's like compromised any of the kind of functionality of the phone, but then there's no internet browser.
Okay.
There's no social media apps. There's no email, but there is like, I can have Waze. Like that's one of the tools that's available, which is a great
Okay.
GPS. So it's like, I've not had to figure out a workaround. I just like have a great GPS on my phone now. And I have a camera.
Yeah.
So I can take really cute pictures of my kids.
Good.
I know a lot of people were like, I can't switch to a light phone because I need like 2-factor authentication for my job or for my school. They offer I've really scoured it and they offer every single 2-factor authentication app that you would need. They have a lot of, I also think it's a great option for teens or for parents thinking about like a phone for teens that they don't want to give a smartphone, because it has a lot of apps like the Huddle, like team sports app. Because I've heard from parents like, well, my kid's soccer team requires them to have this app. So I wish I could give them like a dumb flip phone, but they really need this app. So I think they've been very intentional of making sure that it has really all the tools that you feel like you or your teenager would need without anything that would be like distracting or harmful. Yeah. So I love it. And also I can just show you, this is kind of what it looks like. So it's like a very, very simple, I'm like the glare is a little bit, but it's a very simple interface. So it's just like white and black. Yeah, it's trying not to be like distracting. And the home screen, it doesn't look like an app home screen. It just like lifts
it looks like the light phone one, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that what
And then you can scroll. So I have like my top 5 things I use saved at the top, but then I can scroll down, and the tool drawer, which is like, it looks like it's a Google Play Store, but just it's very limited. So it has utility, finance, some health and fitness apps, some productivity apps. It does have a lot of travel and navigation. I know some people were like, oh, I need Uber or Lyft. It has that. It has pretty much every single major airlines app. It has all the major banking apps for people who use it for finance, DoorDash, things that you need. And then a lot of the health and fitness apps, but I have Venmo on here. I like pay a lot of people through Venmo. So, and then it has also a lot of hotel, credit union, like different types of apps. So I haven't really run into anything that I feel like I'm dying to have on my phone that I don't. Like I said, they continue to kind of like update when, I'm assuming as people are submitting requests, like for some things, like I had recently submitted a request for like the Aura Ring app, because I know like a lot of people like wear the Aura Ring to track their health, and like that recently got added. So if people are like, oh, I want that for my health and fitness, it's like they have things like that. So all need to say, I really have enjoyed it. And if parents even wanted a more limited experience, there's different levels of plans, and you could just get a plan that basically just has call and text. If you don't even want them to have access to the tool drawer, you could take the camera off. The camera physically would still be on the phone, but you could like disable the camera app if that was a concern. So there's a lot of, I just think to me, it's a lot more customizable than a smartphone. Like the smartphones are just really hard to take off the things that you don't want. It's all so built in. And this I feel like starts from the opposite. It's kind of like there's really nothing built in, and then as you want to add these things on, you're able to.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That sounds exactly like the Bark phone for
Yeah.
kids. And also, I mean, any of those kid safe phones, but it's a Samsung device,
Yes.
totally empty. They put their OS on
Yeah.
top. And what I like about Bark, though, if you're going to use one of these for kids,
Yeah.
is that it has an alert system.
Yeah.
So if your kid
That's
does,
right.
so you don't have to review every single thing that they're doing, but if they come across something harmful, you get an alert to the parent phone, whatever that may be, your iPhone or whatever other phone you're using. But I think that it's interesting because I'm always recommending a Bark phone for kids that can ease them into a Wise phone as an adult.
Yes,
because
that's
it's the
right.
same
It's very similar.
type, same hardware.
Yes.
And it's the same approach of you only have what you need and you can add more over time.
That's right.
And even request things. But so the language around this is kind of interesting with people calling things dumb phones.
I know.
It's not the right word.
It's not.
It's not.
It is a smartphone still. And so I think that's interesting. Like the Wise phone has tried to brand themselves as a healthy
Wise.
Yeah. As like a Wise phone or like a healthy phone. Like just because they're trying to say like, we want you to have tools that you need. Like smartphones are amazing. Like they've given us so many tools, but at the same time, they've also caused so many problems. And so trying to like find a way to give the good without the bad. And I think you're right. When I talk to parents, like the Gab phone, Bark phone, and Pinwheel phones basically all do the same thing. They're all like an Android with their own operating systems. And they're specifically designed for kids with those other protective features, like you're mentioning, like monitoring of text, kind of blocking of if they were to try to send or receive an inappropriate photo. And then also like, I think all of them offer GPS tracking. Like a lot of parents want to be able to know where their kid is. The Wise phone is different in that it's not designed for kids. It's really designed for adults. So I do think it makes a great option for college students or adults who are like, I'm trying to move away, from an addictive smartphone to something healthier. And I think it can be a good option even for like maybe older teens if you're getting to like senior year of high school and they're transitioning to more independence. I definitely would recommend it. And I think they also intentionally didn't want to brand themselves as like a kid safe phone because also sometimes kids are like, I don't really want the like kid phone. And so I know. It's like you can kind of convince them, you're like, no, well, like the Wise phone is something you can kind of graduate to maybe when you're later in high school. And like adults are using these alternatives too. Like a lot of adults recognize they don't want this unhealthy relationship with technology. So I've been recommending the Wise phone, especially to moms. I think for those reasons I mentioned, like the Light phone was great. And I think some people have a lifestyle that really allows them to do the minimalist thing. And I'm like, power to you. But as a mom, I feel like I had kind of reached my limit of like, okay, these things are actually really starting to frustrate me, like the GPS or like the wanting to take pictures of my kids. And also the kind of texting. I just think as moms, like there is a lot of coordination in my day and the like kind of lag and difficulty texting on the Light phone kind of eventually was like, okay, it's getting really difficult for me to like actually keep up with people. I think also the Light phone's texting, like message stream, it's chronological, but it's like, you can't search it. Like it just goes like you'd have to like scroll kind of like forever if you like didn't respond to someone to like go find that text message. So I like the Wise phone because I can just, it's a smartphone. I can search. I can really easily see texts I haven't responded to and things like that. So for those reasons, it just ended up leading me to switch.
I'm getting a Light phone 3 and a Wise phone in the coming, probably in about a month or two. So will be interesting to see what the Light phone 3 has improved upon.
I am curious
some things to
that.
check. And then the Wise phone, I'm excited to try that out too. And I had a call with their team and I love the idea of it. What I'm unsure of, and I'm going to document like me testing out these phones, but what I'm unsure of, because I need to be active on some of the social media sites for this podcast. And I can't post from a computer. I will have to use an iPhone for that part of it. So, but that doesn't mean, I can just have the iPhone be for a few social media apps on Wi-Fi, like no cell service on that.
That's right.
And then everything else is what I use for my phone. And so
that's still, I guess
fine.
the Wise phone, because it had solved a lot of the other issues, I still do have a smartphone because Marco Polo and WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger are still not on the Wise phone. And I still
Yeah.
use those some with friends. And so again, I like really don't need it all the time though. So I'm super distanced from it. And it to me feels more like an iPad, like another
Yeah.
tool you would have in your house to use as you need.
Okay.
And I would say like some other messaging apps that the Light phone didn't have, Wise phone does have because it views it as like a communication platform. So Signal and WhatsApp are on the Wise phone, which have been helpful for me because I was in like a number of Signal group chats or WhatsApp message groups. So that's been nice because I still feel like I have the communication kind of platforms I need on my Wise phone. But to your point, I do feel like there are a lot of people for work purposes that they do still need some access to social media and they don't want it all the time. And so I do think it's still a good solution that you can still use the smartphone as like an iPad or their Wi-Fi, but you're just able to really like, I think, distance. And then you're using it really truly as a tool as you need to for your work, for your job, but without being distracted by it when you're like out of the house. Like I loved feeling like just the fact that I didn't have cell service on it was really like, I really can't take this with me, like out of the house. So yeah.
Like the iPad at home that you just use for these certain things.
Yeah.
It's going to be so interesting for me to test these out.
Yeah.
Are there any other brands? Not right now, right?
Not that I know of
like
for adults. There's a European brand that offers like an alternative. I don't know how it would go getting it to have self-service in the United States. It's called Punkt, Punkt. It's like a Danish company. It looks really cool. I like had looked at it online. It looks like it's more than what the Light Phone 2 offered, which I'm curious to see what changes with Light Phone 3. But it has a lot less than the Wise phone. And so yeah, but those are, I'm pretty sure I've done a lot of research on this. And as far as I know, those are really the kind of only alternatives I'm aware of.
And there is a site I just remembered called dumbwireless.com.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they have some flip phones there, some Nokia. They have something called did you just say Punkt?
Yeah.
Yes.
Punkt.
They have the Punkt. And then Unpluck. That doesn't look like a G. Unpluq. That looks to be actually the Samsung phone with, make your smartphone less addictive. So there's that. They have the Light phone, something called a Jelly Star, very miniature, but not so addicting. So that's interesting. So there's that. Like there's some up and coming, but I've been hearing a lot about the Wise phone and I'm excited to try it. Do you have any tips for me as I try to make this transition?
That's a great question. I'm trying to think. I don't know if I have any tips other than like I did kind of keep a journal when I switched to my Light phone to jot down things that I was like realizing in myself, like, oh my goodness, I was reaching for it so much, or I didn't realize like how much I use my phone to do this. I knew I would kind of forget. So I did kind of jot notes each day down to myself about how the experience was going. Oh, I will say the thing I did do before I switched to the Light phone, because I knew I was going to be like really losing access to a lot of things, is I mass texted and emailed a bunch of my friends to say, I'm switching to this. And I knew that the Light phone was a lot harder to text on. I was like, and it's going to be hard for me to text. So I'm not going to text as much. If you need to get in touch with me, please call me. And I also I think explained to some colleagues, like, I'm not going to have access to email on my phone. So if it's urgent, like, please just call me or text me so I know I see it. I'm going to have a lot more limited access to email. It's really just going to be during these times during the day. So I tried to make it easier for myself by prepping people both in my professional and personal circles that I was going to be making this lifestyle adjustment. Just so that they knew they could still get a hold of me, but I'm not going to be as responsive as I was on email. I'll be, I'll respond when I see it, kind of thing. I'll try to check a couple times a day, but if it's urgent, just pick up the phone and call me. And that was really received very well. I feel very supported by a lot of my friends. They were like, oh, that's so inspiring. Let us know how it goes. And I do feel there's an increasing number of people who are really sick of their smartphones. And so people were very supportive and kind of curious how it was going to go for me. And then, I think with the Wise phone, I tried to just not put apps onto it unless I really felt like I needed them. And so,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
I think I just started out slow with whatever the kind of basic things were, and then like slowly just
Yeah.
kind of added things on. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Because it'll be interesting to see what Wise Phone, if they continually add more and more,
that's
is
what I'm
it just going to
curious.
turn into
Right, like
a
how much
smart,
does it turn into the smartphone? And I think that's
Yeah.
why, from what I've seen so far, like they've tried to be really limited, even more so than I think like the Bark phone. Like some of the even the phones for kids, I feel like have more apps available, at least than the Wise phone does right now. And so I think
Okay.
I talked to the founder once and he just shared that that's just been like a tension, right? Like he wants it to be usable for people and have tools, but at the same time, it's kind of like this balance between, do you really need to do that thing on your phone? Can you do that at a computer or some
Right.
other way? Because I think that the whole appeal of the Wise phone is it having it not be as addictive as a smartphone. And, part of that is keeping off kind of like addictive apps. But I think the other part of
Yeah.
it is just not putting so much on it that it does just draw you to use it all the time, instead
Yeah.
of alternatives. So,
Yeah. And I hope they just never add social media apps. And that, I mean, that's a fuzzy line too. Like, what are social media apps really? I mean, we know the ones for sure, but then there's some that are like, you could probably consider, just because those, while some people use them for work, like
yes.
me, they're more toys than tools. I think,
Yep.
Tim Estes, who you know,
Yeah.
Tim said social media is like the anti-technology technology, because
Yeah.
technology is supposed to make you more productive. And
Yeah.
he's like,
Right.
no, it makes you less productive. It wastes
That's
all
right.
your time. You're getting nothing done. And so I think that that would be a hard line that they're drawing. And I'm excited to learn more. I'm interviewing the founder in I think January, and
Yeah.
then I'll be testing it out myself.
Oh,
So
good.
I'm
Well, I'm
I'm
excited.
yeah.
Yeah, no, and I'm pretty sure they're very committed to not adding social media. And they also added this other category that I hadn't thought of before. They're like, we don't
Mm,
want any apps that are like addictive, kind of like social media. They said, or like isolating. So they're not allowing like
mm,
any kind of gaming apps or things that would just be like you using the phone
good.
like by
Yeah.
yourself. Because they're like, it's
Right.
really supposed to be a tool for communication. And so if it's just like
Hmm.
you isolating yourself on your device, they're like, we don't want any apps like that either. So I know you could ask him. He was like, they were trying to develop a set of criteria by
Yeah.
which their team would then like evaluate kind of every app request that they
Great.
got to see if it fit within their kind of
Yeah.
standards for healthy apps.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because we've all been with an adult who you're like sitting in a room with them and they're just playing Candy Crush. You're
Yes.
like,
Oh my goodness.
are we
I'm like,
talking
are
or
you
are we
guys
not?
embarrassed that that's like
I
really a game for kids? And like we can all see your screen. It's really bright and there's like candy flashing on your
I know.
You're like, are we that boring? Like I feel like this is so insulting. Yeah.
And it's like that is something that is such an example for the kids, because you maybe you feel a little socially uncomfortable, and so you go to that game.
Yeah.
But that we need to be in those socially uncomfortable situations
Yeah.
to build those skills, especially as kids. They shouldn't constantly have an out
Yeah.
to not be able to look someone in the eye. And
Yeah.
so yeah. So okay, I'm really excited to test out the Wise phone. And I guess to like just close out,
Yeah.
given your experience using a Light phone and a Wise phone and experimenting with how that looks for you as a mom of young kids,
Yeah.
would you recommend that parents consider using an alternative style phone, either exclusively or part time?
I guess I won't say like a prescription for everybody. I would just say if you can test it out, I would encourage you to go like 30 days trying to use the non smartphone exclusively. Like, see if you can survive without it. Cause I think at first you're like,
Okay.
there is no way I can use it exclusively.
Yeah.
And I think when I switched to the Light phone, I was like, you know what? I can always switch back, but I want to just see if I can do this. Like it was a challenge to myself. I'm like, these college kids could do it. I think I can do it. And I was actually surprised. Like I made it a year. I feel like I found workarounds. And as I mentioned, I did end up keeping my smartphone for very limited apps, but without the cell service, I wanted to truly feel like the only phone I have is my Light phone. Like I can't make
Hmm.
calls or have cell phone service or anything else on this other device. So that was really helpful for me. And I think, people come down differently. Like I do know some people who have had to go back and kind of have two phones and they try to like really only use their smartphone for work. And then they like are totally off it on the weekends and and you can like forward your calls. Like I know some people have done that where they like forward the calls then to whatever the device that they want to be using. If they're just like, I want to leave the house with my dumb phone, so I don't have email on it, but I still want to get phone calls on it. So I do know people who have figured out an arrangement with both. But I would say if you can, try it out, like just give it a month to see. And you can always switch back, or you can always end up with one of those like middle arrangements where you use the dumb phone sometime or the non-smartphone sometimes and the smart other times. But I think it was a good exercise for me to just try to do no smartphone for 30 days and just see. And I think testing it out is it's just a good awareness exercise. It made me so much more aware of how often I was pulling out my smartphone or all the things I was using it for, I didn't realize. And so, I feel like the new year is a great time to do that. Like January could just be a fun month to just do a kind of digital detox for yourself and just try to go smartphone free for the whole month. So I think that would be my encouragement. And I would say, I meant to mention this earlier to your listeners, I do have like a discount code for the Wise phone.
Good.
If anyone wants to use it, it's just my first name, Claire, all caps. I don't have an I in my name, so that's the one thing to pay attention to. So CLARE, it gets you $25 off at checkout. So feel free to use that. If that's an extra incentive to just go ahead and try to jump right into a Wise phone in January. I've loved my experience going off a smartphone.
Thank you, Claire. I'll put that in the, I'll put all the links to all these things in the episode notes, but I think you're convincing me to do like 30 days of light phone.
Yeah.
Obviously I'll need to have the smartphone like at home for Instagram and stuff for work, but I think I don't know. I'm going to maybe separate physically.
Yeah.
But, and then 30 days with the Wise phone.
I think that's the best way to give yourself time to test each out, is like giving it 30 days. Because there is always an adjustment period and you form habits. And I think it takes a little time to break a habit. And that's what I did. I did like 30 days and like, I thought like I just wanted to test it for 30. And then I did just physically separate the other device. I think you can do it. And I'm excited. I really can't wait to read your assessment from testing out these different phones.
I'm excited too. This is like a seed that's been planted in me for a while. And I think that all parents should consider just a different approach. Like even if it is just, and we can go back, I'll link to some of the information from our last conversation, but just minimizing the apps on your smartphone, like turning on different settings so that it's not so addictive.
Yeah.
Just like there's always simple steps. It doesn't have to be a huge jump, but there's simple steps that can get us to using our smartphones less with the intention of spending more time with our kids and setting a good example for them and all the things. Claire, thank you so much for this conversation, and we'll touch back in on it soon.
Thanks for having me on.